This conference will now be recorded.
Presentations which introduced us to some fundamental ideas in the field of business planning, while recalling some needed steps for adapting these approaches to the circular economy context. We will be following more or less the same trajectory today, with an initial presentation from Roberto Cerchione and Piera Centobelli regarding operational planning of business models and market launch, with a specific emphasis on circular economy. Then, after a break at 11:05, we will have some focus on neuromarketing strategies for promoting circular business models from Nikolaos Dimitriadis from Optimal HR. And then at noon, we will have a talk from Mario Panzera and myself. So there is a slight variation on the program. We will deliver this talk jointly, myself and Mario, regarding organizational forms, both at the firm level but also at the supply chain level, for dealing with a post-growth world, a world in which growth is becoming more and more challenging proposition. Then we'll close the public-facing part of the day with, again, Roberto, helped by Eugenio Oropallo from the University of Naples, Federico II, regarding pitching strategies, so something that is directly impacting the ESRs on their work, on the work they need to complete. So yeah, again, you know, a very nice blend of talks delivered by academics, practitioners, more theoretical content, more practical content, trying to give you all the elements you need to put together a nice business idea and to pitch it in front of our investors on Friday. Of course, in the afternoon, the ESRs will have time to work on their plans. There will be assistance provided by Adrian and by myself, with the objective of progressing towards the final object of this week that you should be presenting to our panel on Friday. This is the program for the day. I don't know, Panos, if you want to add something to this.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Professor Genovese, for outlining the second day. I hope the ESRs and the participants to enjoy the first day. Since I have 10 minutes and I can say a few things, you know, maybe I won't spend all the 10 minutes, so we can give more time to Roberto to say the real things. But allow me to say a few things, you know, of the first day. First of all, let me see, because I received one, and since I received one of the key takeaways, as I said in the first day, first of all, if send us some emails, okay, we have this program, but since we're talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, we're very flexible to make, you know, maybe you can say, give us more case studies. So we can see, we can improvise and give you some more case studies. So please, be critical with us. We like that, okay, in order to give you, because in a way I see it that we work for you, so we want to give you the most out of it. Also, I would like to say, since you are the future, you know, PhD graduates, what I would like to have from you, to have the employability skills. Some people, they say, okay, I don't want to open my own business. That's fine. I'm not saying you should have your own business. This is because what we try to teach you through these 5 days is actually to give you some entrepreneurial skills. But myself, even if Professor Genovese and the other of us that we work in the university, we call ourselves entrepreneurs, meaning what we do, we have the skills in order, is the same skills of entrepreneur, that in order for us to deliver this today, to manage research, to go after funding, okay? So these skills that we acquire the hard way, because nobody of in the past when I was a PhD student taught me that, okay? So think about this, because one day you will have your CV and you will go to your CV to get actually to look for a job. And the question is, why should I take you and not the next person? So this is something that you should have in mind when we do that. Open your mind, okay? And if one door is closed, how do you know it's closed? Open the door. Try to open the door, okay, to get in. Sometimes we see a closed door and we say, okay, it's closed, nobody's in. So let's go back. Now, what I would like every day, if you don't have some key takeaways, that means we fail. That's how I see it. Thank you very much. I would like to mention, if you don't mind, Wasim Malek, that actually sent me some of key takeaways, and I would like to share them with you. He said that in the first, his key takeaway, Malek said to avoid involving friends, families, etc. when you are setting up a new business. Involve people with diverse and different skill sets. That was one of his takeaway. The second key takeaway that he put is alarming once a significant amount of digital information is completed. The lifestyle before the digital transformation will be almost forgotten. This was actually, I guess, a key takeaway that took actually from Roberto yesterday. Another thing that he actually put as a key takeaway, to assist with creative thinking, fresh input every day. Okay, so we wake up today, how can we have a fresh input? Talk to a child, they are not afraid. That was another key takeaway. Finally, he said he loved one of the speakers. He was the speaker, actually, I can say Malek was the speaker that we had, Fisher, okay, that one of the speakers used the illustration of the value hill, okay, which I had never heard before. So that was the key takeaways of Wasim Malek, and thank you very much for sending me, my email, your key takeaways. Now, another thing that I would like to have, from the first day, everybody of us, we talk about innovation, but there is not actually, we don't know what it means. We use it in a different things. The first thing, if I usually, when I had, if I had you face to face and I will ask you, I like to ask you, how many of you like innovation? Everybody raised the hand. But when I said, okay, now we have to do things, it's a risky, thing, then I don't have so many hands up, because innovations means change. You have to change, you have to get out of the comfort zone. That's what we call it. Okay. Now, another thing that I like to make very clear, that innovation, I made some notes yesterday from whatever we discussed, is not a solo genius. It's about collective genius. That's why we have you in teams. Okay. Innovation also, as one of your ESR said yesterday, is not just a product or service. It can be a process or a way of organizing things. Okay. And I gave this let's say my definition, that innovation is equal invention plus commercialization. Now, but why innovation is so important? Innovation is the process by which we can change the world. One thing that you should remember, innovation, to put it simply, is about making things better. New innovation is hard. It requires, of course, taking chances, taking risk, okay? It's not, the same path that everybody follows. For example, we have all the PhDs, and in the past, when we were doing our PhDs, we said, okay, we'll finish the PhD, we'll do an academic career. I'm very inspired with the Finnish people. They have more PhD graduates per square meter, but most of them, they have their own companies out there, okay? Few of them, they go, for academic career. Okay, so that's another thing. Okay, I'm not anyone to tell you what to do in your life, but if you have to think, I say, think big anyway. Okay, because we have all the skills. You are very smart people, all of you. All the ECRs that I met, several times. So, going back now to business model canvas, that thank you very much for putting that effort, and I hope you will find it useful. The first thing that someone will ask you, and you have to be very clear, is what problem are you solving? Okay, and you have to be very clear to say that, okay, right away. For example, I could say convert coffee waste to mushrooms. Okay, that's my, you know, what I'm doing. Okay, so when you do your business model canvas, try, you know, an investor will ask you, or someone else will ask you, okay, what problem are you solving? So that has to be, and that's why we have the business model canvas, because as you know, we have to go through many iterations. You have done that, you know, yesterday. Today you have to see it again. You have to make another iteration, version 2 as we call it, version 3, and that's how it goes. That's until you do have the validity of that the customers, this is what they are looking, and that will be a viable, you know, startup to make it a company and go out and sell. Now, some of the questions usually that I receive from students is why we have so many professors, so many entrepreneurial courses worldwide, and we have so many startups they fail, because the fail rate is very high. It's about 75% the startup fail now. Okay. The first thing is lack of knowledge of how to successfully approach and professionally present your idea. And I think today's, tomorrow, and all these 5 days, we try to put, you know, people, lecturers, to give you this in order to have a better chance if you come in front of the people to present, you know, your idea. Another thing that we see usually is the lack of knowledge of the diversity of financial sources. Okay, of course, it's your own money. There are business angels, but there are other sources. EU funding, you know, under the Green Deal, there is a program there by the name COSME, and COSME gives from 2 million to 5 million, you know, euros for ideas like the ones that you created in your business model, in order, because they call them not bankable. So the bank will not give you a loan for this. So, and because Europe needs the growth, if you have a great idea and you submit this proposal idea, that is very, actually what you will do in these 5 days, of course, in more professional way, then they can give you from 2 million to 5 million euros. Okay. So you have to know what financial sources exist. Yesterday, one of my colleagues, Miss Furi, explained you a little bit about the financial, how, you know, what things you should put, you know, down when you present your idea. Now, and another thing is that usually the startups, they fail because of poor and unrealistic business idea. Okay, so this is, for example, I remember one of my students said, I had a great idea, but I cannot find any investors. And I said, how do you know that? He said, I Google it. First of all, okay, if you're a scientist, if you Google it, it doesn't mean anything. But also, I said, have you ever thought you Google it, maybe nobody wants to buy that product that you have in mind. That's why it doesn't exist. So you always, you know, you have to think about this. And of course, as we said yesterday, you need, and also Wasim said that, we need the balance of skills among founders. It may be wrong, that's why they fail. Okay, they were friends from the university, they got together with the same skills, they went out there, you know, to the real market, and the market actually, you had missing skills on finance, or missing skills on sales, or missing skills to understand, you know, as I said yesterday, the human behavior. So I'll stop here now, because the most important thing is to listen now to Roberto. So Roberto, if you are ready, the floor is yours. And thank you once more, you know, because we have you now and we have you also for the pitching. We appreciate very much for your time, the speakers, but also all of the participants. So Roberto, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Panos, and thank you, Andrea. I will give this presentation with Piera Centobelli from the University of Naples, Federico II. And our main aim is to operationalize the business model canvas and all the aspects that we analyzed yesterday during the first day of presentations. And in particular, the topic is the operational planning of business models and how to convert these business models to a market launch. So in the presentation of today, we will see in practice how to convert a business model, how to operationalize a business model, and also how to validate a business model, for instance, before going to the market. And in my opinion, when building a startup, I suggest always to approach the problem like a scientist that is trying to design, for instance, a scientific theory. So this experiment, this quantitative experiment, should adopt quantitative but also qualitative methods, and also some techniques, some practice to test and validate this experiment before going to the market. And this approach is very important to test our market, but also to test our technical, our operational, and our financial value of the business before going to the market. Therefore, because a startup deals with a new concept or a new method, you need to analyze that the idea will be accepted by the customers, and also you should design and you should validate a business model that will be viable and will be sustainable in the long term. And this approach is called as the business and market validation. And I suggest to develop and to conduct this approach like a scientific scientist making an experiment, and your experiment is your startup. And so, like an experiment, you should ask many questions to potential consumers, to potential customers. You should conduct research before going to the market. You should make hypotheses, and you should conduct your experiment, your practical experiment about your business model in order to analyze the results, in order to learn, in order to avoid errors, in order to draw your conclusions before going to the market. And in practice, but also in the scientific literature on the topic, all the startups that are approaching in this manner this problem, so considering the startup like an experiment, very usually have a failure rate that is very low if compared to other startups adopting other approaching and not considering this experiment and these quantitative techniques. So you should focus in the first time what is the problem that you are trying to solve. And this is the first hypothesis, and also the main aspect that you should include in your questions in order to validate your market. And I suggest to consider in this approach an integration of qualitative and quantitative techniques that could improve your business model and can give you the possibility to validate before going to the final market. Because otherwise you can modify your business model according to the first data emerging from a potential sample of customers, but also by interviews with people that could be interested to your business model. So I give Piera Centobelli will continue this presentation showing a list of the main techniques and of the main practices that could be adopted to validate your business model before going to the market and before the market launch of your business idea. Piera? Can you hear us?
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you also see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, let's start. So first of all, let me thank you for inviting me and for all the amazing presentation and of yesterday's session. I attended all the sessions of yesterday, and they were very, very, very interesting. Today, I'm going to present some important concepts regarding the operational planning of a business model. So, as Roberto already said. But first of all, let me start having a look at one of the most common definition of what a startup is. And as we have already seen yesterday, but can you see the second slide or not? Maybe maybe not. One moment. I don't know.
Hi, Piera. Try to reshare the screen now.
Okay, because I selected the application, but maybe
It might be better to select the full screen, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
I've made you an organizer now, so it should work better.
Okay, let me check if. Now?
Yes, yeah, we can see that.
Okay, great. So, before starting, let's look at one of the most common definitions of startup we already seen yesterday in the second speech. A startup is defined as a human institution designed to deliver a new product or service under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So the most interesting part of this definition is what this definition means. This definition says nothing about the size of the company, about the industry or the sector. So according to this definition, you can start a successful startup even if you don't start working in a garage. Similarly, despite very popular, being a startupper is not about working on a tech product. So nowadays, startup and startupper are buzzwords. There are more entrepreneurs operating today than any previous time in history. We are living through an unprecedented worldwide entrepreneurial spread. But if this sometimes represents an opportunity, it may also be dangerous. Because being a startup is a temporary state, a temporary condition. And in order to be successful, a startup has to be able to go aid the mediocrity. Many examples of successful startups come to our mind if we think, for example, at the Silicon Valley. But for every success business, there are so many failures. Let us think about products retired from the market only a few weeks after being launched, high-profile startups forgotten few months later, and also excellent products used by nobody. What makes these failures particularly painful is not just the economic damage, but they are also a colossal waste of time, efforts, and more generally, resources. But how we can avoid such a situation? It is necessary working on the idea, the product or service you will place in the market and its feasibility. You have to ask to yourself, am I working on the right idea? Will my product or service satisfy the needs of my customer? How can I realize it? What I need to realize it? A recent report highlighted that considering, for example, a portfolio made of 100 companies, most of its returns would come only from the first biggest successful startup, sometimes defined a unicorn startup, followed by 9 other successful but not amazing companies. The remaining 90 fail. The 10 successful startups more than compensate for 90 failures. As you can see in the picture on the left side of the slide, the highest failure rate is in the information industry, which may be surprised at first glance. The information industry, however, has relatively low barriers to entry and includes a large portion of the true high-risk startups. You can think, for example, at how easy it is nowadays realize and commercialize a mobile phone application, for instance. Another important aspect emerging from this report, from this analysis, is that the common reason for startup failure is the lack of product market fit, as you can see in the picture on the right side. Can you imagine behind these failures how huge can be the economic damage done to individual employees, companies, investors, or more generally, stakeholders? This aspect is very important and allows me to introduce today some important considerations that every startup should do before completing the operationalization of the business model and market launch of their final product or service, of course. So if I have to summarize the basic concept of our today's speech, I would say don't invest a lot of time and resources before you are certain people want what you are offering. Validate your assumption as quickly and cheaply as possible, and give yourself the time to modify your strategy, if necessary, of course. So, the Lean Startup. The Lean Startup is a movement dedicated to preventing these failures. The answer is to shift from the traditional linear approach to a circular approach in the operationalization of your business model. The Lean Startup method is designed to teach you how to drive a startup. Instead of making complex plans that are based on a lot of assumptions, you can make constant adjustments with the so-called build, measure, learn feedback loop. Through this feedback loop, we can learn when and if it's time to make a radical change. We can see later that we call this change pivot, or whether you should proceed with your own current strategy. According to this build, measure, learn loop, we can see that the fundamental activity of a startup is to turn ideas into products, measure how customers respond, and then decide if it is necessary to adopt a pivot or a persevere strategy. All successful startup processes should be motivated to accelerate this feedback loop as soon as possible. Before analyzing in detail the elements of this feedback loop, let me take a step back. The Lean Startup takes its name from the Lean manufacturing revolution, born in Toyota in the last century. More generally, the Lean thinking radically modified the way supply chains and production systems work. The Lean revolution posed a lot of attention on the difference between the value creating, or also known as value added activities, and waste. The Lean Startup adapts these ideas to the context of entrepreneurship, proposing that entrepreneurship judge their progress differently from the way other kinds of companies do. So the internal and external environment for startups compared to those of big companies, big and consolidated companies, are totally different. So startups work in a context of extreme uncertainty, as we said before. Progress in manufacturing is measured by the production of, for example, of high quality physical goods. The Lean Startup uses a different unit of progress called validated learning. In line with the scientific learning, we can discover and reduce, or at best eliminate, the source of waste that are affecting entrepreneurial plans. A startup should address basically all the function of an early stage venture. So as to establish vision and concept, product development issues, marketing and sales, scaling up, partnership, distribution, channels, and also the structure and the organizational design of a company. So the Lean Startup can give entrepreneurs a clear guidance on how to make the many trade-off decisions that they have to face daily. So, as I said before, if, for example, it is necessary or not invest in a specific process, planning the production, formulate decision regarding, for example, the infrastructure, the layout, when to establish a partnership or not, and also if it is necessary to modify the strategy according to the feedback received from customers. As I mentioned also yesterday, if I remember in the second speech, one of the most important reference regarding the Lean Startup is the book The Lean Startup, published by ReTraCE in 2011. That is also nowadays a milestone for all startuppers and more in general entrepreneurs worldwide. So this is I suggest to have a look at it if you want, of course. Very often, as we discussed before, measuring progress is done making sure our work proceeds according to the plan. So we usually verify if the quality of the product or service we are offering is high, or we check if our costs are in line with what we planned. But what happens if sometimes goes wrong? As we do every day in our life, maybe we say, I learned something important. But we should be careful, because learning sometimes is the oldest excuse for a failure execution, execution. So we must learn the truth about which elements of our strategy are working to realize our vision, and which of them are creative, innovative, but also foolish and useless. We must learn what customers really want, not what they say they want or what we think they may want. The Lean startup introduces the so-called validated learning concept. And validated learning is a concept of demonstrated but empirically what a startup has discovered about valuable truths about its business. Many entrepreneurial teams before product launch are scared and postpone, for example, the launch date of their product or service in the market. So I perfectly understand this behavior. This delay prevents many startups from getting the feedback they need. And the previous failure made us more afraid of another outcome, even worse, building something that nobody wants. There are so many cases in which the customers do not want the product or service launched. It may happen that our strategic analysis of the market is completely wrong, but you should be sure about this. Only test it empirically through experimentation rather than using focus group or market research, and especially when your product is totally new. Customers could not tell us what they wanted. After all, if they had never heard it. It is not easy to convince someone using a product or a service he or she never heard before, regardless how perfect, beautiful, and technically advanced it is. The answer we should ask, the question we should ask ourselves to understand which features are necessary to start this loop is which of our efforts are value creating and which are wasteful. According to the Lean, something is value creating if provide benefits to the customer. Anything else is a waste. Similarly, in a manufacturing business, customers don't care how a product is assembled. They just want that it works correctly. But in a startup, who the customer is and what the customer may find valuable are unknown. This is one of the main aspects of the uncertainty that a startup has to face. As a result, learning is an essential unit of progress for startups. The effort that is not absolutely necessary for learning what customers want can be, of course, eliminated. So let's have a look at this phases of this loop. Every business plan begins with a set of assumptions. Because the assumptions haven't been proved to be true yet, of course they are all some assumptions, they are often wrong. The goal of a startup's early efforts should be to test them as quickly as possible. What differentiates the success stories from the failures is that the successful entrepreneurs had the foresight, the ability, and the tools to discover which parts of their plans were working brilliantly and which one are not. And of course, adopt their strategies accordingly. Data are important, of course, for starting a business, but the most important driver for analysis are people. This works both in business-to-business markets and in business-to-consumer markets. startups need extensive contact with the potential customers. As I heard in previous presentation, they have to go outside the building, discuss with potential customer or adopters, and get back to the company refining the business model. There are two main behaviors emerging when entrepreneurs conduct market research and talk to customers. The first behavior is behavior of typical of the followers of the just do it approach. So in this approach, entrepreneurs are impatient to get started and don't want to spend more time analyzing their strategy. They want to start building immediately, often after just few conversations with few customers. Unfortunately, because customers don't really know what they want, it is easy for these entrepreneurs to dilute their expectation and discover that these responses are not enough to depict the real feeling of the market. Other entrepreneurs can fall victim of the analysis paralysis. So they spent a lot of time refining over and over again their plans. How to solve this problem? So how do entrepreneurs know when to stop analyzing and start building? The answer is the minimum viable product. An MVP helps entrepreneurs to start the process of learning as quick as possible, but it is not necessarily the smallest product imaginable. It is simply the fastest way to get through the build, measure, learn feedback loop with the minimum amount of effort. Contrary to the traditional product development, which usually involves a long incubation period for product perfection, the goal of the minimum viable product is to begin the process of learning and test fundamental business hypotheses. So minimum viable products range in complexity from extremely simple to extremely complex prototypes. Deciding exactly how complex an MVP needs to be, of course, cannot be done with a mathematical formula. We cannot fix a threshold. It requires judgment. But the good news is that the entrepreneurs are totally in love with their idea, looking for perfection, and therefore sometimes, let me say very often, overestimate how many features are needed in a minimum viable product. So when you are in doubt, my suggestion is to simplify. Let us see a different approach. In this approach, I found this very interesting slide in the web. The figure in the slide illustrates a common misconception about what a minimum viable product is. Realizing an MVP does not mean to be hasty. Also, the process of the incremental product development should be analyzed in detail. People sometimes have the idea that delivering a minimum viable product means delivering an incomplete product. Can you imagine if a customer wants a car, if may be happy with the wheel or half of a car? As shown in the slide, with each delivery, the product gets closer to done, but in the journey to the final product, the customer is angry because he can't actually use the product he or she wants. Finally, when the product is complete, the customer reaction is something like, "Oh, finally, why didn't you just deliver this in the first step and skip all these intermediary steps?" In this example, the customer is happy with the final product because he knows exactly what he or she wants. For startups, that's usually not true. To skip all these processes and have a smiley face at the end of the interaction process is pretty idealistic. This figure in the slide represents technically what can be defined as an incremental and interactive delivery, but the absence of a feedback loop makes it very risky. So now I want to illustrate a different approach. We start almost describing the same context. So the customer wants a car. But this time we don't just build the car. Instead of focus on the product, the customer, we focus on the underlying need the customer wants fulfilled. For instance, the customer need is can be simplified as I need to go from A to B faster. And the car is just one of the possible solutions to do that. Of course, the car is just an example, but this can be applied to any kind of customized product development situation. So the team delivers the small thing they can think, allowing customer testing it and give a feedback, the so-called MVP, as we said before. So the customer is not happy with our first delivery, for example, a skateboard. This is very far from the car he ordered, but that's okay. In this situation, we are not trying to make the customer happy at this point. The main goal at this point is just to learn. Ideally, to reduce disappointment, the startup team can explain this aim clearly to the customer in advance. However, as opposed to the first situation described before, the skateboard is a usable product that helps the customer get from A to B as he or she wants. Not great, but better than nothing. So we tell the customer, don't worry, the project is not finished. This is just the first of many interactions we should have. We are still aiming to build a car, but in the meantime, please try this product and give us a feedback. Because with this approach, we can learn something surprising. For example, suppose that the customer says he hates the skateboard, and we ask why, and he said, I hate the color. And if that's all, so the only thing he doesn't like is the color, we can make another skateboard in another color and let the customer be happy. So the key question is, what is the cheapest and fastest way we can start learning? After playing around, for example, in the office, the customer say it's fun and great to move from, for example, from the coffee machine to the desk, but it is not stable. So the next interaction, we are trying to fix this problem because we learned one of his needs. Customer can now get around the office without failing, but the customer is not happy with this product. In the meantime, he's using this product, is giving us a feedback, but his biggest complaint is that it is too hard to travel longer distance, like between buildings, due to the small wheels and the lack of brakes. So next release of the product is something like a bicycle. He had fun going around with it and loves the fresh air on his face, but sometimes he needs to travel to, for example, another city, and the bike ride is too slow and tiresome. So in the next interaction, we had an engine. So now what? Again, maybe the customer is happy with the motorcycle, and we could end the project early than planned. Most products are launched in the market with the complexity and the features that nobody uses. The iterative approach is really a way of delivering less, of finding the simplest and cheapest way to solve the customer problems and needs. So our main aim is to minimize the distance to the result. Or again, the customer could choose to continue with or without modifications of the products. We may in fact end up with exactly the same car as originally requested, no? As we said in the previous slide. However, it is much more likely that we gain vital insights along the way and ended up with something completely different. The customer, compared to the previous situation, is overjoyed. Why? Because we learn along the way that he really lost fresh air in his face. So we end up with a car, but a convertible. He did get a car after all, but a car better than originally planned. Think, of course, to the skateboard as a metaphor for the smallest thing you can put in the hands of a real customer and get real feedback. You can learn and make changes instead of just following the plan and hoping for the best. A minimum viable product is not necessarily a physical product. The MVP goal is to create a first interaction with the market and have an initial database of users from which to learn and obtain relevant data and start the loop, the feedback loop, as we said before. Also, a video can be a minimum viable product. A video that explains, for example, how the product will work, engage the customers even if he or she is not able to use practically yet. Let me show you an interesting story. The story of Dropbox. In parallel with the development of the platform, the founder wanted to validate his idea and ask to himself if we can provide a better customer experience than those already existing. Will users choose our product? Of course, it was a difficult question to ask using focus group or interviews, since the functioning of the platform was certainly not easy to explain. Consider that in 2009, the cloud concept was unknown to many people. In addition, for most people, the file synchronization across platform was even considered a problem. Nobody uses these services and those already existing these services. And the existing services were very difficult to be used by average population. In addition, for the Dropbox business model, it was also very difficult to show the functioning of the software of the platform through the development of the basic version, since it required a considerable technical effort. In addition, even investors don't believe in the technical diversity of the platform compared to the solution already existing. Therefore, Drew Houston, the founder and CEO of the company, decided to create a simple video which showed how Dropbox works, and share it in the channels of early adopter of something like technology communities. No. The video was, of course, published one day, and this strategy led to hundreds of thousands of visits to the Dropbox website. The beta list had a huge growth in just few hours, from 5,000 to 75,000 users. The strategy of using an MVP video was so successful that Dropbox continued to use it as an essential tool to explain how the platform worked until 2013. For startups that rely on patent protection, there are special challenges when, of course, realizing an early product. Also, if not necessary, you may want international patent protection, for instance. In many industries, patents are used primarily for defensive purposes from competitors. And the fear of the competitors and the competition is one of the most common objections over the years to building a minimal viable product. And especially the fear that large consolidated companies can steal startups' idea. However, we have to say that it's not easy to have an idea to be stolen by others. On the other side, if you have to think that if a competitor is able to pass your startup, it will be able to do it even in the future, even if the product is in the final stage of as in your mind. So if the startup is not able to iterate the feedback loop quicker than others, there is not an exit strategy at all for it. Sooner or later, if you will enter in the market, you have to face the competition. And you can gain a competitive advantage only if you can learn faster than others. Finally, realizing a minimum viable product, it helps to prepare future startuppers or entrepreneurs that the early MVP very often results in bad news. And successful entrepreneurs do not give up at the first sign of trouble, nor do they persevere the plan right into the ground. Instead, they possess a unique combination of perseverance and flexibility. And the MVP and the related failure or failures are just the first step on the journey of learning. So let's go ahead with the second phase, the measure phase. A startup job is to rigorously measure where it is right now, and then plan experiments to learn how to move the real numbers closer to those evaluated in the business plan. Most products, even those that fail, do not necessarily have zero traction. Most products have some customers, some growth, and also some positive results. And one of the most dangerous outcomes for a startup is to fail in the so-called living dead area. Entrepreneurs are creative, enthusiastic, and positive by nature. As a startuppers, we want to keep believing in our ideas even when the end is so close. This is why the myth of perseverance is so dangerous. You should measure your performance as clearly as possible. In other fields, like engineering, the focus is always, almost always, on the optimization, something like reducing production times, improving product performance, and so on. For instance, for example, for designers, it's improve the usability of a product. Unfortunately, these indicators do not fit for a startup product if we don't know before if the customer wants it. So in the second phase, the startup must determine whether real progress is being made or not, and involves measuring the results obtained from the experiment's performance during the build phase. In order to speed up measuring, ReTraCE suggested conducting activities such as real-time monitoring, split tests, funnel analysis, cohort analysis, and so on, just to say few of them. Just to make an example, it is easy to measure how many visitors my website has, or how many registered users I have, for example, in my new website, or in my social network profile. These metrics, however, do not allow us to understand if the startup project is actually growing, or if we are developing a sustainable business, since they do not analyze the growth in the use of the product. And it will be wrong to correlate the increase in weekly visits, for example, to the increase in sales, or also to judge an increase in my Instagram followers as if our social media efforts were working. These, in fact, are what has been defined as vanity metrics, which led to wrong evaluation and considerations. For example, the increase in traffic can only be relevant as a metric if we also understand from which channel it comes from and why it is increasing. For example, is it linked to a social media marketing strategy? Is it focused on a particular content I published, or is related to a partnership with a blog or a digital newspaper in particular? Of course, any situation is different, so you should be able to find your own metrics for your business. But let's see how metrics should be in general. Actionable. Measure only things really important. You will be motivated to use as many metrics as possible to be as more accurate as possible. But you will have to try to choose just few linked by a cause and effect. The details are only useful when a problem has been found and you are trying to understand what went wrong. The second is accessible. Many reports are not completely understood by the employees, but also by managers and stakeholders. So the first thing is to make the reports as simple as possible, so that everyone understands them. The easiest way to make reports comprehensible is to use tangible and concrete units. The last thing you want are metrics that people don't understand. So you have to fix in your mind to speak the language of other stakeholders in the business. For example, consider using site visitors instead of web traffic. And consider that also different audiences can require a different metrics. Auditable. Transparency is the key. Show connections and formulas used to achieve such results. The biggest benefit of actionable metrics is that they can be used to achieve great savings, especially when they tell you that you don't need to do something. Metrics have to be transparent to the people who drive the product vision, take decisions, including company founders, of course. So you have to ask yourself every minute if is the report accurate. Believe me, when it's your business idea on the line, things go wrong, it's much easier to believe the report is the problem rather than the idea itself. Finally, even if you have to fail, it is important to fail as soon as possible. Don't waste your time in try to improve your product, refining all the details of your product for something that the market does need. You don't have to be scared of the pivoting. I think no words can explain better than the Instagram story why understand that something is going wrong can lead not necessarily to bad situation, but also to new and great opportunities. Instagram is not an app born as we know today. Kevin Systrom, CEO and co-founder of the company acquired by Facebook in 2012, at the beginning was not of the idea of creating a photo sharing application. Its name was Bird. Also very difficult to pronounce, and it was an iOS-based application focused on sharing geolocation, something similar to Foursquare. It allows you to check in a certain location, earn points, and share photos of meetings with the friends. When it was launched in the market, it was not a success. It reached also a certain number of users, but it was not easy to use and had too many features that made it confusing. So the CEO observed the user's behavior through qualitative and quantitative analysis and found that the tracking function was not the preferred one by users. Users prefer to share photos. So the founder and his co-founder decided to focus on that function eliminating everything else and studying the existing apps, already existing apps, in order to understand which features they have to develop to differentiate from them. They decided to have the feature regarding the integration with other social networks and allowed users to use filters for their pictures, but they tried to keep the app as simple as possible. For example, user could post a photo in just 3 clicks. After months of experimentation and prototypes, they launched the app and called it Instagram. Everybody already knows the rest of the story. Instagram is one of the most common social networks available today. So the lesson is we have to face bad beginnings and failures, but use them to improve and refine initial idea. All the best companies in the world have had an unhappy track record. YouTube also, for example, was originally a dating site. You always have to evolve into something else. And finally, I will close my presentation with another example that shows how important is pivoting and also resilience, even when you are a big company. As the coronavirus crisis continues to challenge the fashion industry, brands and retailers are responding by producing both personal protective equipment for those on the front lines and protective masks for the general public. So don't be scared of pivoting. And that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
thank you
Pira.
very much. Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. I believe that it was indeed very, very comprehensive and provided a very good, actually very good case studies for all this context, and it actually triggered quite some discussion on the chat. I'm not sure if you had some time to see all this conversation from the chat. Maybe you, Roberto, since you're not talking in the second half, if you had some time to.
I'm reading the comments now. Okay, very, very interesting points. I can try to give an answer in my perspective, of course.
Yeah,
and okay, first of all, I fully agree with the point of view of Mario Pansera that has been clearly expressed in the chat. And in my opinion, when a startupper is launching a new product or a new service, he or she should be also a good analyst. And for these reasons, in many cases, startuppers and more in general entrepreneurs should be reactive to the customer's needs. But we should be reactive if these needs already exist in an explicit way. Otherwise, it is more complex if these needs do not exist in the present, or if exist but in a tacit or in a not completely explicit way. So in this more complex situation, startuppers should be proactive, not only reactive, to be able to formalize these customer needs. And as an example, we can think about the launch of the first smartphone, when the customer could not desire this device because it cannot exist an explicit need for a product or a service that does not exist at the moment. So we should try to anticipate the needs, but not to construct these needs. That it is the wrong perspective, the wrong approach, in my opinion. And I said that the startupper should be a good analyst because he should have excellent reactive skills, but especially proactive and open skills. And to achieve this aim, I suggest the use of a practice tool, the Javelin board, that is an open tool that it is very adopted in the context of the lean startup movement. And this tool I write in the chat, the Javelin board. It is a good tool, an excellent tool that could be very effective for analyzing, but also interpreting the customer's need in practice, in order to avoid to let the companies to construct the customer needs, as Mario was saying in the chat. And I fully agree that I don't want that companies should tell us what our needs are. And therefore, when you are analyzing your market in this school for the experimental parts that you are conducting, I suggest you to take care in your building blocks of your business model, not only the business aspects, but also the social and the ethical and the cultural aspects that are characterizing your business models in order to avoid these errors.
Yes, I had a look at the questions in the chat, or questions or discussion in the chat, and basically I will say that there are sometimes two main strategies. The first one is to try to do when you have to launch a new product or service on the market. The first one is to do something better than others, so better than competitors. And the second one, and the most successful, is to try to catch latent signals from the market. And so it's not that companies have to say what customers need, but you should be able to understand if there is something that the customer may find useful. And one or the most common case study also in this case is the launch of the first iPod. And before that, yes, people listen music, but nobody know in that moment that he wants to have thousands of songs in his pocket. So in my opinion, my suggestion is to try to catch the signals in the market.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This was very, very comprehensive and complementary to the discussion that we have actually on the chat. Okay, so thank you very much again once more for the session. We finished on time with everything, including the discussion. We will take a 5-minute break now, and we continue with the next session. Just
Thanks,
checking.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Bye bye.
We thank you. Just checking now for the next session if maybe Nikos Dimitriadis.
Hey, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I just try to share your screen just to make sure to test it a bit now in the break.
Okay, let me just see. Share screen, include media and sound. It has, yes. Share. You see my screen?
Yeah, we see everything is good.
Okay, fantastic. You just see my screen, right? Not these funny things on the side.
We see the PowerPoint screen. I mean, only the PowerPoint.
Just the PowerPoint screen. Okay, because there's also
we see you also the lower bar. Like now it's full screen.
Okay, no, that's fine. But you don't see the GoToMeeting interface with all the participants and stuff. Okay, fantastic. I can leave it like that if you want.
Leave it in 3 minutes now. We can start. I mean, so.
Okay, just let me see how to stop sharing. wait.
No,
okay, stop sharing.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Okay, cool. So in 5 minutes we'll be back. Okay.
In 3 minutes.
okay, I'm here actually. I will switch off my mic. Just let me see the camera. Does it work?
Okay.
Let me see. Can you see me?
Works. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay.
Okay, super.
Bizarre camera angle. The other way. Okay, great. I'm just call me in and I will come in as soon as
okay,
you tell me.
Sure. 3 minutes.
Good.
Okay, so let's just start with a very brief introduction for the next presentation. As you can see from the title, neuromarketing for promoting circular business model, and you have to understand the rationale behind this topic. It is already difficult, as you see out there, to sell things and to convince, let's say, people to buy your product or your service. And this becomes even more difficult when you have to sell, let's say, sustainability, sustainable related products, and so on and so forth. And in order for you to succeed, you need innovative approaches and innovative methods that, let's say, go a bit beyond what is called mainstream. And for this specific purpose, we have with us an internationally renowned expert, top speakers at corporations, conferences, and you name it. I will let Nikos Dimitriadis to provide more info on all his exceptional work. And he will share with you really the secrets behind neuromarketing and how you can use it in order to make the most out of your product or service that you're trying to propose to your startup, and to ensure that the customers will indeed be engaged. I don't want to say more because then we're touching ethical, let's say, considerations. But let's say to have customers that are engaged with your product and your service. Nico, thank you very much for your time and for your interest to join us. The stage is yours. We cannot
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
And hello. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, it's okay. It's okay.
Can you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for having me. It is really a pleasure to contribute today. And I hope that this presentation will be your introduction to the wonderful world of the brain and how new techniques allow us to understand how the brain works, how the brain perceives messages, and how it accepts or rejects these messages. Now, unfortunately, this is a very big topic which I devoted my life to for the last 15 years. So in the limited time we have, I will try just to introduce a little bit the rationale behind using neuroscience and the tools. Okay, so my goal for today is for you in the next 40 minutes, 40 minutes, is to get a nice overview of what is applied neuroscience, the use of neuroscience in a specific socioeconomic activity like business, marketing, communications, startups, etc. Why is it important, and what are the tools that can help you? Okay, so this is my goal for today. If we achieve this in the next 40 minutes, I will be more than happy. Of course, there is much more to say, as I mentioned, and as Solomon also mentioned, because there are also very interesting models based on neuroscience on consulting, which means I can give you the 10 top tips of influencing the brain. But as a professional that do a lot of neuromarketing research around the world, I usually avoid to do this because life, especially now in the crisis, is it looks so unpredictable. We're all very stressed. We see our plans crumbling down. We don't know how the next 6 months will be in our lives, and our brain is very occupied with these things. It spends a lot of its available energy. Our brain has a specific amount of available energy per day to spend in its activities, and it spends a lot of energy because of the stress, anxiety, unpredictability, and all these things that happen around the world. So unfortunately, we are very fast in getting some the top 3 tips to conquer the world, and then we take them like they are, and then we apply them like they are, and of course we fail, because all tips and tricks that you learn in the world, they are context specific. You need to understand your context and to then adjust them in the context. So I will refrain a little bit of giving you do's and don'ts, but I can give you, because that's also the core of my profession and my academic research, I will give you do's and don'ts of neuromarketing research. So how to apply this kind of research in order to improve the presentation, the messages, the overall touch and feel of what you are trying to do, of your startup, of your website, of your app experience, or anything else that comes to interact between what you offer and the brains of your customers, investors, partners, vendors, etc., etc. Okay, so please consider it as an intro to neuromarketing. And of course, the good news is that neuromarketing is not anymore restricted as it was when it started in late 90s, when there were very few agencies around the world that were offering these kind of services. The good news now is that you can find neuromarketing agencies all around the world. Almost every country has a neuromarketing agency. And if your country doesn't have the country next to you, and the devices are highly mobile, we put them in a bag, we travel around the world. Everybody is rather mobile to do this kind of stuff. Of course, we don't do a study on fMRI. It's very difficult to put an fMRI in the luggage and then fly somewhere else. But all the other devices, as I'm going to show you, they are very user-friendly, they're very mobile, and they can be just carried out wherever you are. So you do have access to neuromarketing services today. It's not like, as I said, 20 years ago. But let me share the material I prepared for you. I have some videos with sound, so a little bit later, please let me know if the sound is okay. Okay, so that's the materials I prepared for you to have some visual aspect. If you have any questions, of course, on what I'm talking about, please let me know in the comments, and I hope at the end we'll have some time to go through these materials. Okay, so what I'm going to present today is a big part of my previous work. I have published up to now 2.5 books, and I say 2.5 because my first book has now a second edition. So my first book in 2016 was Neuroscience for Leaders, and just a month ago, Neuroscience for Leaders second edition came out. It actually went very well globally. The publisher is very happy, and it has been already translated in Chinese, 2 versions in Chinese, Japanese, Portuguese, and we have a few more languages now coming up. At the same time, I mean, a few years later, in 2018, I published my Advanced Marketing Management book. This is more a textbook for master's level marketeers and business people. It doesn't have to do only with marketeers. It's actually really about developing the right mindset and skill pool and organization for your company to be customer centric. So it doesn't have to do if you are in marketing or what kind of company you want. And there I have also a chapter devoted on neuromarketing skills. So the things that I have been discussing today, there is a specific chapter on the Advanced Marketing Management book. Both of my books are published by Cook & Page in London. Okay. Also, many of the things that I will talk about come from my own personal experience in studying brains around the world. Up to now, I have studied, me and my teams, we've studied around 5,500 brains from more than 25 countries. Actually, now it's more like 5,700 brains from around the world. So I've been to Malaysia, India, the Gulf countries, Russia, whole Northeast Europe, Baltic countries, the whole of Southeast Europe, Italy, Austria, Germany, UK. All these countries are countries that I have been in order to conduct neuromarketing or neuro HR, because neuroscience is not only applied to the brains of your customers, so not only to see how the brain of your customer reacts. Now there is a new, and we're one of the very few agencies, I think there are less than 5 in the world, that we apply similar technology, but other algorithms, to study the employee brain. So prepare to get a promotion based on an electroencephalogram measurement in a few years from now. Okay, I'm half joking, but this is where we are going. So where is all this discussion about applied neuroscience? Why neuroscience is needed? We in corporations, and just have in mind that I'm an adapted child of neuroscience, because I came from business studies. My bachelor's, my MBA, my PhD, they are all in marketing. Of course, heavily, especially my PhD, heavily in psychology, as marketing is. But I came from business studies, and around 2004 and 2005, so around 15, 16 years ago, I realized that neuromarketing is the only, if I want to be a little bit provocative, it's the only scientific field that provides me with answers that I can trust concerning decision making and human behavior. So how we take decisions and how these decisions influence our behavior. Okay, so in marketing, in business, we traditionally have a lot of methods in order to unlock and predict decision making and consumer behavior, our customer behavior. And these models of research usually come from some field in psychology which is called cognitive psychology. So the focus groups that we were doing, focus groups you've heard, maybe putting people in a room, carefully selected people with a psychologist, which is usually the moderator. You put them in the room and you study the dynamics of the conversation, of course, what they say, but also what they say relatively to each other. Or you have personal interviews. It can be face-to-face. It can be what we call in the research industry CATI, computer-assisted telephone interview. Or it could be surveys, right? I mean, questionnaires with 1 to 7. Would you buy this product? From 1 to 7, would you recommend this product from 1 to 7? Of course, now all this has evolved to, for example, online panels with smileys. Do you like this product? Put a smiley and all this. So both the interview-based research methods, personal interviews, telephone interviews, focus groups, which are more qualitative in nature. Qualitative because you don't ask somebody to give you a number, you ask them to give you words, and based on these words, you try to analyze and to get some meaning, some insights out of it. So this is qualitative methods, and the other, the questionnaire, which is more called quantitative methods, because the answers could be put into numbers, and if you have enough sample, you can use statistics. Okay, which statistics by definition is a mathematical tool of creating insights of a specific sample that can later be applied to the total population. So as marketing researchers, as business researchers, we usually had either qualitative research or quantitative research. But both of these type of studies, or both of these research methods, were what we can call cognitive psychology methods. And they're called cognitive psychology methods. Cognitive psychology, the field of psychology, which became quite prominent in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, of course, stronger. Okay, now not so much, where the representative, the source of insight, of data, okay, insight then is your analysis, but the source of data, if you want to understand decision making and predict behavior, if you want to unlock the forces that creates our activity in the world, is you. This was the cornerstone, if you want, the building block of most of our research methods. If I want to know if Nikos will buy this product, then Nikos' subjective experience in his mind, his thoughts, his feelings, his intention. Actually, these three, I didn't mention this accidentally. Actually, these are the three elements of an attitude. And all research, most of research, 90% of research we did in business is attitudinal research. Because an attitude in psychology has three components. One is, what do you know? What do you think? It's a more analytical. Then there's an affective part. How do you feel? Do you feel happy, sad, tired? And then there is a behavioral part, but the behavioral is an intention. I would do this. So what do you think? How do you feel? What would you do? Actually consists of all the questions we asked in marketing research in the past. But as I said before, the assumption in this cognitive approach, cognitive psychology approach, was that Nikos and his mind, his consciousness, and his aware experience of who he is every day is the right representative that will give me the right data for me to have a glimpse into his decision making and behavior. So Nikos and what Nikos says, how Nikos responds to 1 to 6 or smiley, or how Nikos elaborates on discussions on a focus group, is actually the data we need to predict Nikos. Because if Nikos doesn't know, who does? Okay, because this kind of mentality. However, and there is a whole day discussion we can do about this. However, neuroscience since the 80s and some other parts of science, behavioral psychology, which was before cognitive psychology, so behavioral psychology, you've heard of people like Skinner, or Pavlov's dogs. So behaviorists were saying, we don't care what is happening in Nikos' mind. I just need to see stimulus and response. If I show to Nikos this app with this button, and if Nikos clicks, I don't give a damn what happened inside the black box. By the way, we couldn't see. We didn't have the technology to see. So they said, what is happening here is irrelevant. What I need is input, output, and correlation between the two. Okay, this is classic behavioral experimental thinking, Pavlov's dogs, etc. So if I show to 10 of my clients a website with a red button, and to other 10, this is called A/B test, and to other 10 of my potential clients with orange button, and more click on the red, then the red one is the right one, because the red one pushes or creates this desired decision making. So behaviorists were only about input, output, and correlation between the two. Actually, most of big data analytics is behavioral psychology resurfaced. Okay, it was reborn. Big data analytics is a big renaissance of behavioral psychology. I don't give a damn what my customer thinks. If I show to my customer the product like this or like that, where is he going to click or she's going to click more? This is pure behavioral psychology. And then cognitive psychologists came and said, no, no, no. We need to know what is happening between input and output and correlations, because it can go completely wrong, the correlation. We need to know the brain. And they said, who is the right representative to talk about Nikos' brain? It's Nikos himself. Okay, and now neuroscience comes and says, actually, this is not the case. We cannot trust Nikos. Nikos and his conscious, aware, lived experience of every day, okay, what Nikos calls his self, the sense of self that Nikos has, actually is not the right representative, because Nikos does not have the insights, the biological links into his own brain to know how his brain works. And this is, I put together just 3 slides with 3 research data that you might find interesting. The first one that you see here is that 95% of all our decision making is actually in the unconscious. Okay, I say unconscious and not subconscious. Is something we don't say anymore. It's a Freudian term, which has some negative connotations. So we don't call it subconscious anymore. We call it unconscious. Okay. So the unconscious decides more than 90. Actually, there is a new measurement by a guy called John Bartsch. He's a neuroscientist, that he found up to 99.4% of all your behavior and all your decision making is purely the unconscious. Now, there is a 0.6% that conscious plays a role. Not conscious takes a decision. Actually, it's biologically impossible for your consciousness to make a decision. You think you take a decision. It's an illusion. Most of scientists now is that there is a consensus, apart from some economists that some obscure scientists that say, no, 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 we still have, full control in decision making. No, we do not have. Okay, it's biologically impossible. Also, out of 10 million bits of information that your brain receives from your senses, so eyes, ears, skin touch, smell, taste, all these give around 10 million bits of information per second to the brain. You know what is the capacity of your mind, your conscious mind, your consciousness, to process bits of information per second that come from the perceptual system? It's just 50 bits. It's up to 120. 120 is the maximum bits. Okay, so from 50 bits to 120 bits is your conscious experience of analytics. So where is the rest one? What is the rest one? Where is this data go? The rest of it's actually 11 billion now in new measurement. Okay, the third study, and it is the most interesting, I think, the one that brings the others together, is that the human brain decides up to 11 seconds before you even think to make a decision. So there's a study that started, a series of studies that started in the 80s, which showed that actually your brain decides up to 11 seconds when it's faced with a situation. You are not aware of this, and not only the brain makes the decision, but then the brain is initiating your behavior. So with this electroencephalogram, not only we measure, and this is classical study from Benjamin Libet in the 80s, where he first discovered this. He discovered when he was asking people to choose A or B, and he was measuring brain activity through an electroencephalogram, he could actually find out the part of the brain that was indicating the choice, A or B, and then he was measuring that not only this part took the decision, but it was initiating the motor part of the brain that actually tells your hands what to do, your arms what to do. So not only the brain decided, but the brain also gave the signal already to your body to move, your musculoskeletal system through your nerves, to actually press A or B without you being aware. Now, before your arm moves, this all happens in milliseconds. Before your arm moves, you say, A. but you're just reading out the decision. You didn't take it. Okay. So all this might sound strange to some of you. All this might sound heretical to some of you. All this might sound difficult to believe because the mind has such an arrogance. The mind is so self-important. You know, oh no, I take the decisions. I take because I can. But actually, what we see in science is that this is not the case. And as I said, now all these are a consensus. It's not like I'm not presenting some kind of obscure, small group of scientists that say something. This is actually now the mainstream opinion. Okay. Now, what are this? All this means? All this means that the brain is where the magic happens, not the mind. Now, the mind is a sub process of the brain. I'm not talking between the difference between brain and mind, like Descartes said in the 17th century, like the mind is something else and the brain is something else. No, when I say mind or conscious thinking or your aware lived experience, I'm actually talking about a subsystem of your brain. So your brain is here and you are a small part of your brain. Now you think you are the most important part of the brain. You think you are the driver of your brain. You think you are the controller of your brain. No, no, and no. You're just a small part of your brain. You are still important. No, we are still important. We don't know exactly why. There are many theories now because since we found out that decision making doesn't happen in consciousness, then I'm sure all of you are asking, then why do I need to be conscious? Why am I'm not just a robot or a zombie? Zombie philosophically, it was the argument of zombie. Why not zombie? And there is a lot of new theories of what is the role of consciousness, since it is not for decision making. Okay, and there's a big discussion there as well that maybe another time. So since we realize that the brain does everything, and we are just a subsystem of the brain, then we need to understand the brain. And then European Union comes in and gives half a billion of euros in 2013. 2 months later, Obama comes out and gives 100 million to the Brain Initiative. China just created the Brain China project, which is bigger than the other two. India has an India Brain project. So everybody is now trying to decode the brain. And everything is about the brain, okay? Because if the brain is the processing organ that receives all this data, crunches it, and initiates behavior, makes decisions behavior, this means that everything can be studied with neuro. Everything that we do as human beings, from parenting to going to the museum, to drinking wine, to reading books, to selling things to others, to being good leaders, etc. So since everything is an input to the brain, crunching, decision, and then behavior, then we need to understand this system better, and we can apply this system actually to everything that humanity does. There is nothing that we cannot use it for. Okay, and of course you all know of Elon Musk and his Neuralink, the company he invested in, that they will actually put chips directly in the brain, in our brains, so they can my brain business computer interface. My brain will talk directly to the computer, maybe even bypassing me as Nikos. Okay, of course there is a lot of medical and health benefits of what he does, but I'm sure it will be implemented elsewhere as well. Okay, so how does this work? So you have all the information coming from the senses. You remember 11 million, the latest measurement, 11 million bits, and you are the conscious mind, you are only 50 to 120 bits, only 50 to 100. So what is happening with all this info? The info comes in, is studied by the brain in unbelievable speed. Actually, the fastest biological process known to humans is neuron communications. The communication between one neuron and the other, it is around 1/1000 of a second. It's the fastest biological process we know. Of course, transistors work much faster, but this is technology. But in biology, the fastest process known to us in whole nature is how the brain communicates inside. Okay, so it does a lot of things, a lot of crazy things, and it filters the information, it analyzes it, categorizes it, it fits it with previous experiences, it combines it with other things that are happening, and then some of these will appear maybe in your conscious mind. So actually, what is a brand? A brand is a new filter. What a brand is something that your brain uses as a decision-making criterion to help the brain live the life as the brain wants it. So if you go to a supermarket and you see 1,000, brands of or cubes of toothpaste, if you stay there to to see each one, you will lose your life. So the brain, in order to achieve its goals, it takes some decisions by creating these heuristics, these shortcuts. And these shortcuts are extremely beneficial, okay, evolutionary speaking. And this is actually a brand. But how the brain creates this brand? There are many studies. I will just mention a couple. For example, if I give you, and I do this in class actually, if I give you cornflakes, cereals in two bowls, unmarked, and you try and say which one is the best, usually people say 50-50 one or the other, because actually they are the same inside. But still they don't understand. Most of people don't understand it the same. They say this I like more than this. But if you do it many times, it's around 50-50. If I put in one bowl Kellogg's, it's the same cereals inside, okay? And I give it to people and they try the one and the other, all of a sudden the one with Kellogg's is liked around 60%, which is statistically significant. The same with TVs. If the same TV is branded Hitachi or something else, it's perceived as more expensive, okay? Or when kids eat fast food wrapped with the same wrapping, it's the same fast food, they will say that the one that is wrapped in McDonald's is superior to that. It's exactly the same thing. Now, do you think that your taste buds changed? No, the taste buds remain the same. The taste buds send the correct signal to the brain, depending on what kind of flavors they detect in one or the other. But every signal that is coming through our senses does not go directly to your mind. Your mind does not get a direct feedback from reality. No, it gets a secondary, already processed, already selected, already distorted information. So you, me, Nikos, does not get the reality as it is. It gets reality as the brain experiences it. Okay. And so this leads us to something that we call don't listen to people, which is very strange to say this as a marketeer, because in marketing, the first thing we say to our students is marketing is about people. You have to ask people, you have to be customer centric. But remember what I said about cognitive psychology. If we are not the right representatives of ourselves, then asking you is wrong, or I might get something which might be worse than if I didn't have it at all. Okay, so if the case is, how do I capture Nico's decision making and behavior, potential behavior, asking him maybe is a wrong idea, which is very bizarre. If you ask me this when I was studying marketing or when I was a marketing consultant or CMO in companies, I would say, are you crazy? Of course I will ask people, but actually, if you don't have the other information and you stay only to what people say, you will get a very wrong idea. And there are so many examples about this. I will go very fast to four of them. Okay, the first one, very famous study. They asked people, do you want more choice of taste, flavors of jam, marmalade, or less? And everybody said, the vast majority said, we want more. I want to have more to choose from. But when they actually created two stands with different number of jam flavors, in one it had 24, the other had 6, imagine which one sold more. Which one made more profit? The one with the 24 or the one with the 6? The one with the 6. So if you listened to people, if you said, how many do you like? Do you like to have 5 flavors to choose more, 10 flavors to choose more, or 25? Majority of people, vast majority, say 25. But when it becomes reality and they go somewhere to buy, they buy more from the 6. What's going on here? If I trusted people, I would sell less. Okay, second example, and one of the most famous, actually this is the number one example you hear from everybody that deals with neuromarketing. It was also one of the first academic studies in neuromarketing. Okay, so what happened in 1985? Coca-Cola decided to remove all Coca-Colas from the market, so there was no Coca-Cola anymore. They introduced a new brand called New Coke. So there is no Coca-Cola, there is a new Coke, and they changed the flavor as well. And the flavor, they made it much more sweet flavor to compete with Pepsi. And they did so much research that they found that the new flavor, the new taste, the new formula is much better from the old Coca-Cola formula and much better from the Pepsi formula. So they rebranded, they took it in the market, and of course it was a big failure. You see people here demonstrating. Actually, you will see on the left side, they keep demonstration. They're out on the streets, bring back my Coca-Cola. And they did more than 200,000 people test. 200,000 people test. You cannot do more than that. Okay, and it showed that, so what went wrong? What went wrong now we understand with neuromarketing. When you put people in an fMRI scan and you give them to drink a refreshment, a carbonated drink, with or without the logo, it activates different parts of the brain. So if you give me to drink Coca-Cola or Pepsi, but you don't tell me what I'm drinking, the parts of the brain that activate it are the reward parts, the pleasure, the hedonistic part, that part to do with sensory pleasure. But when you show me Coca-Cola and I drink at the same time, this is not the part that is so much activated. The part that it's much more activated and wins, because you know our brain is a competitive jungle. There is no harmony, Hare Krishna, Hallelujah. There's nothing like this. The brain has many systems that fight every day for energy. I said energy is very important for the brain. Okay, so if you give somebody to drink and at the same time they see the logo, different part of the brain is activated. And this is a proof that we cannot do consumer research anymore by asking people. Okay, we have to see which parts of the brain are activated and which parts of the brain were activated when the brand was seen. It was more about, you know, emotions, social acceptability, memory, etc., etc. So completely different story. And this is the Coca-Cola president that said, we put all the money in in marketing research and we failed. We have to understand emotions, and emotions are actually the bread and butter of neuromarketing. Okay. So and there are two more very fast studies I will show you. This study was in a petrified store in the US, a petrified forest in the US. People were stealing parts of the petrified forest. They devised two messages to make people stop. The one showed many people stealing, the other showed just one person. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, it's much better.
I'm
It's
back.
much better.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay, okay, cool.
Maybe,
So I switched off my camera because it showed that I had some problems with the connection.
good, it's good
So,
now.
okay, perfect. So actually, look how crazy this is, guys. You give a message and you say to somebody, buy this, join me here, check this video of mine, download this demo feature. And while logically, consciously, you say something that it doesn't require misunderstanding, it's very clear, you might be saying to the brain the opposite. So this message that said, don't be one of the many people that steal, actually activated a part of the brain that, and it motivated it to steal. So do you understand how we behave and we take decisions has nothing to do with common sense and the daily experience we have as human beings? There is much more things going on there. Okay, and my being here and talk about neuromarketing is for you avoiding making these mistakes. You have to avoid making this. And of course, another study with smoking showed that, you know, these messages, smoking kills, it actually activates the reward part of the brain in smokers. The reward, not the contempt. So for a smoker, the sign smoking kills means I want to smoke more. Okay. So there is a lot of studies that show that we say one thing, we understand one thing, but the brain has a completely different opinion, opposite opinion. And who will determine your behavior? You or your brain? There is not even close. This is not even close. If we have a comparison, and we have many, between does the mind help us predict more behavior or the brain? So a mind as a subsystem of the brain or the analysis of the brain itself. It's not even close. The predictability power of self-reporting research. Okay, self-reporting research is when you report, you say, Nikos, I like this, do you like this? You know, these things that we were talking before about cognitive methods, okay, has the least predictive value, the least. Second is behavioral psychology, and first is neuroscience. So neuroscience is the most predictive, second is behavioral, and last one is what we have been doing the last 50 years, you know, which is a disgrace. Okay, so how do we study the brain? In my agency and in most of neuromarketing agencies in the world, these are the tools we have. You know, we study the brain through electroencephalogram. We want to see brain reaction likability. Okay, we want to see also attention through eye tracking. There's even emotional facial analysis, emotional voice analysis, biometric analysis, you know, something like the old lie detector. And I want to show you some examples now, okay? Now, I will not show you this example because we don't have time, but I will show you this one. Now, although it looks a little bit complex with this electroencephalogram and the, you know, all the different cables and all this, and the different regions of the brain we study, and the different brain waves we study. You know, do we study the alpha brain wave, the beta? What do we study, and what is the algorithm? All this sounds too complex, you know, and indeed, some of the people that I work with, they say, what now, Nikos? I have to become a neurologist. I have to go back to the university and become, you know, and take an MD degree in neuroscience. I said, no, you don't have to, because actually the results of neuroscience are extremely simple. They cannot be more simple. It is the simplest type of research you can do. Actually, you know, I have done hundreds of questionnaires in my life, hundreds of focus groups, hundreds of interviews. It's much more complicated. Neuroscience is actually, neuromarketing is extremely simple, because what you will see is just these three measures. So what we measure with, of course, there are many more, but most of neuro agencies in the world use these three, and many of them use two, not even three. So what do we see with an electroencephalogram? We see likability of the brain. Is the brain activating a positive motivational network, which is called approach? Did the brain decide to approach you or to avoid you? And this is what we measure. Okay. Also, this is the first line. The second line is engagement. Did the brain find something important and decided to commit to it, or it's not important for the brain? And the last one is called cognitive load. And this is from information processing theory, actually working memory theory. We have a specific bandwidth of information we can receive in our short-term memory, in working memory, and then to create short-term or long-term memory that can crunch data. And this is measured, okay, it's measured by specific parts of the brain that we analyze through an electroencephalogram. And this actually says the higher is this, the more the brain suffers to decode the message, the more it spends energy to figure out what is happening. Okay, so look at this. This example, and then I will show you one video, and we're finished. So this is, and I will let me see if I can switch on my camera. So this is, if you can see me. Okay, can you see me? Maybe. So this is an app. Okay, this is an app for a bank, and this was a study, actually in an Italian bank, and this is a study of what the bankers call onboarding process, digital onboarding. And the digital onboarding process is when we are trying to motivate customers to actually download the app and start using it. So from the moment you download it, since you are ready to launch it and use it. Okay, this is called digital onboarding. And the digital onboarding process for this app had 12 steps. Okay, 12. You see the 12 steps down here, 12 steps. And here you see the results from electroencephalogram while the sample group, the participants, were performing this task. What I want to show you is some interesting thing. You see that on the step number 11, likability for women fell very much, very sharp. Very sharp it fell. Okay. For male, it was a little bit okay, even better. And when you see importance, the same step 11, importance skyrocketed for women. For men, it even fell a little bit. So what happened in step 11? In step 10, the app was asking participants to take a selfie for security reasons. Step 10. Step 11 was asking participants, do you want to keep this picture? Okay. Do you look good today? This was actually the question. And of course, you see what happened in the brain. And then when women put the one that they liked, you see how likability skyrocketed. But this thing that you see here did not appear in the interview, because we always have interview or questionnaires after the process to also collect self-reporting data. And if you compare what the brain says and what they say, it doesn't match. The last thing I would, and of course, one more thing to tell you, look here on the end, the female brain crunched data much easier than the male brain. So, just be careful of stereotypes. They don't work, okay? You see, for example, that it's a mobile app and the female brain surfed through it much easier than the male brain, okay? So the last thing I want to show you, and please ignore some of the next slides I have, okay? Because anyhow, I have a lot of materials and then I'm choosing what to show you or not. So I want to show you one video, and this is the video from a study we did in Ukraine with UNICEF. And I'm very proud about this study because it won a couple of awards. It was voted as the, I will switch off my camera. It was voted as the one of the best CSR campaigns in Ukraine, and also the global website, which is called Ads of the World, included it as a best case from around the world. So here you will see how the experiment is taking place. You will see all the devices, and you will see how neuro can be a force for good, not only to sell products. The last thing I will say is that pay attention. This is about psychological violence, not physical violence. So we hired actors and actresses, and they were swearing at the screen. They were bullying people in the camera. And then we took participants, we put them in front of a laptop, and we played these abusing videos, and we wanted to see what happened in the brain. Okay, so take a look. Put up the volume if you cannot hear.
Взагалі не знаю, як реагувати, коли до тебе так звертаються.
Я не сприймаю це якось погано. Ну, я насправді, мені шкода цих людей, тому що я розумію, що у них всередині негатив є.
We conducted a neuroscience experiment. We asked actors to play the aggressors and say words that could offend, abuse, and hurt.
Ти як твій батько, ніхто.
Та ти взагалі не чоловік. Якщо ти мене кинеш, я накладу на себе руки.
Я тебе ненавиджу. Ти в зеркало себе видела?
We invited ordinary people and tracked how their brains reacted to psychological violence.
We can really go deep inside the brain and see the real reaction to real situations.
We have used the tools of modern neuroscience to study the real reactions of the brain. Participants' emotions were assessed using Russell's model. In the experiment, we compared how people manifest their reactions to psychological violence and what they really feel.
Краще б твоя матір зробила аборт. Що ти одягла?
An indifferent facial expression disguises sadness.
У тебе нічого не вийде. Подивись, на кого ти схожий.
Behind the cheerful mask is pain and fear.
Я в тебе більше не вірю. Да ти вообще не мужик.
Irony hides disgust towards the aggressors.
Ти ніщо.
A smile camouflages anger. The experiment has proven that psychological violence destroys us from the inside, no matter how hard we try to hide this. It's time to end suffering. The time has come to talk with kids, parents, loved ones. Talk against violence.
Okay, and this is it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Nico. This was really impressive, like really impressive. It also triggered quite some conversation and debate on the chat now.
I see the number and I'm already, excited. Now, unfortunately, I have a corporate presentation in 5 minutes. If you would like to ask me 1-2 questions, I can reply fast. I would do it.
Okay, quick question.
Yes.
Quick question number 1. Ethics. How do you deal with ethics?
Yes, ethics is indeed the first question we get. So I fully feel you on that. Of course, we follow all the processes, both the legal and the ethical directions from marketing research associations. So people that come to be tested know why they come to be tested. They're already from the recruitment process notified that this is a neuro study. There are also some criteria for people to participate or not. For example, if you're taking antidepressants, you cannot participate. You know, if you had brain surgery, you cannot, or brain damage, you cannot participate. So there are some also criteria, and of course we follow all the GDPR issues. People can stop whenever they want. They can have access to their data. They have all the information who to talk to if they want to ask an extra question. So as with every other marketing research method, and especially innovative ones, because usually it's an innovative tool that creates this stress of what is happening. We try to follow all the criteria and all the, both as I said, ethical and legal considerations. In order for neuromarketing to become mainstream, we have to make sure we do it correctly and right.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I don't want to keep you, especially since you have to run to the other presentation.
Thank
you
you
very
Adrian.
much for this presentation,
It was really a pleasure.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, let's take. Let's see what's happening here. Let's take a 9-minute break. Sorry for this, but the presentation and the discussion was quite engaging. So let's have a 9 minute to refresh, and then we continue with the next presentation. Okay, so I guess everyone is more or less back from the 9-minute break. We will now continue with our beloved Dr. Mario Pansera and the presentation on framing innovation in a post-growth world. And they should also answer some of the concerns or questions that were raised yesterday as well. Mario, if you're around.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the beloved.
Always.
Not even my wife called me like that.
You see?
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. I can hear Andrea.
Yeah, Andrea, you're speaking, but we cannot hear you for some reason. Even though you're unmuted, but we cannot hear you. No. Mm-mm.
Okay, let me say that this today I was supposed to present something that I already presented last week. So Andrea and I decided to have an upgrade session. So we will build on the presentation that I gave last week, but this will be a joint presentation between me and Andrea. Okay. Andrea, are you there?
Maybe he's trying to fix now something. Let's wait a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So let me try to share the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. And last question.
We see the PowerPoint.
Can you see the slides?
Yes. Full screen.
Okay. Okay, so I've actually missed the interaction that Mario has kindly provided. So let's say, this is something that we have decided to put together following the seminar that Mario gave last week to the consortium that triggered really a lot of questions and a lot of interesting observations from the ESRs. So really what we want to discuss today is essentially how organizational forms specifically related to the world of production should be meeting the challenges of the transition towards circular economy, especially when the proposition of economic growth is becoming more and more challenging. In the last couple of days, I mean, I've been hearing about growth a lot, referred to individual organizations, referred to the whole economic system. Well, the reality is that, recently growth has become something quite difficult to be achieved. We are in the middle of a recession, but I'll show you in a moment that this is not just because of COVID-19 that we say that growth is something challenging to be achieved. And within this environment, we openly realize that circular economy is a contested concept. There are many multiple forms that the circular economy can take. As you know, me and Mario put together a few months ago a paper about a potential alternative version of a circular economy. What we have tried to do in the last weeks is reflecting about some practical forms, practical examples that this circular economy could take, and also measures that could support this. So why do we say that economic growth is becoming more and more a sort of chimera? Well, if you look at the historical series of the GDP in the European Union, we can say that, you know, it's not that we are in a recession now because of COVID-19. We have been in a sort of steady state, and unwanted, if you want, steady state, in a sort of stagnation for the last 15 years. If you look at the historical series of the European Union, so taking a sufficiently large economic area, well, you can see that, okay, there might be individual countries which are experiencing some growth, but really, you know, on average, this growth that is written also in the economic treaties that are at the basis of the European Union has not been achieved for multiple reasons, of course, but this is the reality. And what we are also observing at the same time, you know, while we have this rhetoric about economic growth that is brought forward by the European Union, the circular economy discourse, which has been promoted by the European Union, has been witnessing a sort of shift from the original idea of an economy where you produce what the people's needs, or what's needed by the majority of the people, an economy where there is a lot of planning about social needs that need to be satisfied. So the first imperative in the original idea of circular economy was to reduce, to produce what's needed, and then to reduce, repurpose, recycle when reduction is not possible. Well, what we have seen through the different action plans, through the different documentation which have been put together by the several think tanks that are shaping the debate and the discourse in this arena, is that we are focusing on many actions, but really the main one, which was at the foundation of circular economy idea, has kind of disappeared. And we had an example of this during many of the presentations we had yesterday. So it's like also this idea of circular economy has been modified by the growth, by the economic growth rhetoric of the European Union. And so we can say that, you know, what we are seeing in the European Union is a version of the circular economy which avoids some of the fundamental questions we will need for an ambitious transition towards a circular economy. Who decides what to produce, why to produce, how to produce, who wins, who loses? So what are the sectors that are going to be affected by the transition, and how jobs will be modified? What will be the impacts on class relations? These are still unanswered questions in many of the EU documentation. So it's like we are trying to push the circular economy agenda into a growth-oriented framework, which is the one from the European Union, framework which is oriented to growth within also an institutional architecture of austerity. Because if you look at the Maastricht Treaty, at the European Stability Mechanism, well, there are many mechanisms such as the financial criteria that are built in the European treaties that also constrain public investment for a Green New Deal, for instance, and at the same time force you to grow, because you know that every European country is evaluated by looking at how well that country is doing against two fundamental parameters: the deficit to GDP ratio, which should not exceed 3%, and a debt to GDP ratio, government debt to GDP ratio, which should not overcome 60%. If you are above these two thresholds, well, you need to take some very heavy correction measures. Italy, Greece, Spain have gone through all these in these recent years. And the problem here is that, given that this is a ratio, if the denominator of this ratio, the GDP, decreases, maybe because you're also implementing some ambitious circular economy measures, well, this triggers some problems according to the European treaties. So we can see that according to the institutional architecture of the EU, an ambitious circular economy might not be possible. The first imperative of circular economy is not possible within this architectural framework. And Mario, do you want to add something to this?
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, so just to come back to the context of this of this week, what are the consequences for and the implication for startups, company that wants to go on board on this transition to circular economy? I think it's very important to understand what kind of circular economy the European Union, in our case, is promoting. Because it's very important to understand the context in which sustainable or circular business model are going to emerge or to act. So what we have, what we are claiming in our paper is that at the moment we are facing an eco-modernist version of circular economy that is based on this following principle. First one, a blind faith on technology. Technology will save us. We don't need to change the system. We just need better technology, high-tech technology. And the second one that is directly connected to the first one is that the market will take care of it. We don't need like planning. We don't need intervention from the states. The market, when the market mechanism will fix and will automatically lead us to this transition. And of course, the third implication is that we don't need a political transformation, because if markets and technology will save us, we don't need to act. Basically, we just have to sit in our houses and just keep buying stuff. So there is this idea of that circular economy, at least the eco-modernist version of circular economy, will always deliver win-win solution. That there will be no loser at all. And of course, this is attached to this idea of growth that Andrea introduced. Carry on, Andrea, please. The next slide. But I think that's another important principle to put the role of the company or the startup in the context of a circular economy frame as an eco-modernist project is the importance to realize that not only circular economy is problematic from a political perspective, from a political point of view, but I have very good reason to think that circular economy, at least in the way foundation like Helen McCarthy Foundation, or even the circular economy action plan of the EU is framing circularity, is problematic from a scientific point of view. Because, for example, this is a graph that appears in the reports of Helen McCarthy Foundation, and even from them, the economy cannot be totally circular. Normally, there is this residual waste, small details, but the devil is always in the details. No, even from them, for them, this small residual waste that is supposed to be the minimum, it's according to their calculation is around 27% of the total raw material that we need as an input for circular economy. And why is that? Because of thermodynamic law. We know that economy is entropic. It cannot be circular. Just the first. Come back. I just want to be one point, Andrea. at the end, what is circular economy promoted by Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the European Union is, in my view, and if you consider that basically we are still producing residual waste, we need still raw material to perpetuate this infinite growth ideology. At the end of the day, to me, this dominant view of circular economy is just classic waste management. Right? There's nothing changed since the 60s and the 70s. No, we just still we still want to minimize residual waste or make the system more efficient in terms of material use and energy use. Carry on, Andrea. And why is that? Because from ecological economics, from the law of entropy, from physics, we know that economy is just a subsystem of a wider system. So economy is embedded within society that needs energy and produce waste heat. It produces entropy. And society is embedded in the health system, so in the ecosystem. At the end of the day, we are living in an open system that needs solar energy to function and release heat into the rest of the universe, in the outer space. So economy, at the end of the day, cannot be totally circular. And we have to acknowledge this because this has important implication. Please, next slide. And the important implication is that we have to abandon this idea of growth. We have to abandon this idea that companies in addressing the needs of people or addressing the constructed or socially constructed needs of the people, as we have seen during this day, cannot pursue infinite growth. No? Why? Because economy cannot be circular. So second, we must abandon the idea of infinite growth. And at the moment, circular economy risks to be a new form of enormous project of greenwashing, and very complicated and very sophisticated new form of greenwashing. So what we propose is that to create a different alternative framing of circular economy that needs to address social justice, needs to address democracy, and must be accompanied by a transformation of social order. Carry on, please. So if to those of you that follow my presentation, my seminar last week, what we are proposing here is an alternative framing of technology, not only of circular economy. Of technology meant as in a wider sense. No, technology meant as ways of doing things. No, it can be organizational technology, it can be artifact, it can be processes. And the idea that we propose is based on the work of the seminar work of two thinkers. One is Ivan Illich and the other one is André Gortz. Ivan Illich wrote a book called Convivial Tools, and André Gortz is one of the father of political ecology. And what they propose is to think about technology in a convivial way. Conviviality is a notion that is opposed to industrial productivity and consists in radical rethinking the relationship between people, labor, technology, and the environment. Move on. And the basic idea of convivial tool is the idea that innovation and technology are political phenomena, are political and social processes. Most of you attended my presentation in the first events that we had, in which I presented this idea of innovation as a vector. Innovation as a vector it means that innovation has a normative direction, and the normative direction is decided within society. So the direction in which we want this vector to be directed is decided by society. If you want companies or new startup or new firms to be circular, or we need to decide what are the components of this vector. No? And these components can be can result in very different direction of our innovation process. For example, we can decide that we want to innovate for the sake of equality, or we want to pursue only profitability, efficiency. Our point is that the resultant of this vector cannot be like always win-win solution. We cannot achieve totally, we cannot achieve, for example, equality if you want to maximize profitability. We cannot achieve full efficiency if we want to maximize also democracy, for example, or democratic control over technology. So what we propose is that a radical different view of technology that is essentially political. Next slide, please. So these are the dimensions of conviviality that I discussed very shortly last week. Let me just recall it briefly. My idea is that everyone should read these two books. One is the Ecology as Politics by André Gorz, and the other one is Tools for Conviviality by Ivan Illich. Just to recall you what conviviality is about, conviviality is based on five dimensions. One is relatedness. That is about how we create technology that bring people together to work together. The second one is access. Who can produce and who have access to technology. Think about, for example, nuclear energy is by definition, by default, a non-convivial technology because it prevents access from people control. And actually people like from science and technology studies like Langdon Winner wrote a couple of papers arguing that nuclear technology is only compatible with authoritative government, because at the end of the day you will have to make a decision that is not democratic. That is not a democratic decision about how to deal with nuclear wastes. Third point is adaptability. So the convivial technology is a technology that is compatible with independence, that is able to give the people, the user, the capacity to for example, to stop using a specific technology. The fourth dimension is biointeraction, and this is more related to the notion of circular economy. So the idea is to produce technological artifacts or processes that are compatible with life on the planet. And the last one is appropriateness. This is a very awkward word in English, and this is related to the idea of framing productivity. This is making a political question about what is the meaning of productivity and efficiency. Why we need productivity and how we frame productivity. We need productivity to increase the outcome of the process, or for example, we use productivity to reduce working hours, for example. This is something that is never led to the worker decision. If we want to, for example, if we double productivity in our factories, can we have the possibility to decide how to use the surplus produced by the productivity? For example, can we decide that if we are increasing double our productivity, we can halve our working time, for example, or maintaining the same level of salary? Now, just because we don't want to give the impression that we are just radical thinker that only criticize, Andrea will propose. Will present you a few examples of organizations that are already experimenting this alternative way of framing technology and, if you like, circularity.
Thank you, Mario. And as we have reported on this slide, these are things on which we are reflecting really during these weeks, related to both informal and formal organizations, which in the current climate, so in the middle of a pandemic, are facing timely challenges, and they need to confront directly these post-growth scenario. So they are organizations that need to thrive in an environment where there is no economic growth, taking into account ecological considerations, facing common challenges. We'll talk about them in the next few minutes. First example that I want to provide to you is a very typical example in Western Europe at the moment. Examples that deal with industrial crisis. This example is inspired by what's going on at the moment in Naples, in Italy. There is a factory, a Whirlpool factory, producing washing machines. actually Whirlpool, this large multinational enterprise, has decided to shut down this factory. Now, of course, the Italian government is trying to put together some measures to save the future of this plant that employs 500 people, so quite significant one, plus 1,000 people in the supply chain. Unfortunately, what we see is that the responses that the government is trying to give are not adequate, because the government is trying to find new companies which want to acquire the sites to continue producing exactly the same things that are more costly to be produced in Italy than in Poland, that might be difficult to sell in the market due to the current scenario. So workers are protesting about this. What we are trying to propose, also interacting with trade unions that represent these workers, is an alternative scenario where we convert this plant, this factory, into something that does something useful for the community. Why don't we turn it into a repair center that can repair, remanufacture, refurbish washing machines and other white goods from all the south of Italy, trying to reutilize the installed manufacturing capacity for something which is good both for the economy and the environment, and also socially. So we could try to hit all the dimensions of sustainability, also trying to encourage what's happening at the European level with the right to repair directives. This measure could be sort of giving the possibility of realizing an actual right to repair things, creating jobs in this part of the value chain, which is very much overlooked at the moment. And in doing this, we can rely on some historical experiences, such as, for instance, the one from the UCAS plan in the UK that tried to convert productive capacity into something that can be used for producing socially desirable things, where workers can also participate in determining what to produce, how to produce, using their own knowledge. Another example, which might sound quite familiar to the Italians we have here, over the summer in Italy there was a lot of debate because the government needed to source new desks for schools, anti-COVID desks, to make sure that students were socially distanced in classrooms, because in Italy we typically have two places desks where you have two students sitting together. So the government spends the whole summer with a tendering exercise, spent 2 billion euros on sourcing these new desks, wasting all the old desks which were sent to landfill probably, or have been piling in some yards in the school. While what happened in some schools in Naples, some schools that offer vocational training, well, students themselves, students who are studying joinery, took the old desks and then simply cut them in half. This resulted in the school saving money because they didn't have to buy new desks. This result is in no waste being created because the existing desks were just refurbished in order to meet the new purposes. This resulted also in the government saving money because no desks needed to be bought for that school. So an example of how you can have some stupid top-down linear solutions which are also taught with the idea of incentivizing growth. Okay, let's produce new things, and some brilliant bottom-up convivial circular solutions which you can implement straight away locally, that can do well for both the economy and the environment, and also have a positive social impact. Another example During the first wave of the pandemic, a lot of governments wasted a lot of money on expensive contracts for sourcing masks, which were very much in need. Notably, the UK government spent £150 million on masks which were not usable. So masks which were bought by signing a very expensive outsourcing contract and that were not conform to the specifications. So they were not usable for protective purposes. Another approach, much more sensible, what the Puglia region did in Italy. They had a whole warehouse which was unutilized. They had some people who were at risk of unemployment coming from some local factories which were closing, from the textile industry due to low demand during the pandemic. They said, okay, let's repurpose this building, let's convert it into a textile factory which will produce masks. So essentially a government-owned factory which produces masks to serve local needs and also exporting it to other regions in Italy. Another example based on the secondment that I am undertaking at the moment in an agricultural cooperative in Sorrento that produces Sorrento lemons. This is a very good example of a democratically run cooperative where essentially you have members which vote for every decision. The management of this company is elected by workers, and this is a true post-growth organization because they cannot grow above a certain limit because there are very specific biophysical constraints to the production of this company. There are geographical constraints because a Sorrento lemon needs to be growing in Sorrento. There are just a limited number of agricultural fields, and there is a certain yield that you can get if you want to keep the production organic. So, typical example of a post-growth organization. Still, this organization, in order to survive and to minimize risks, need to sell their production to big supermarkets that operate according to different logics. So here we see a sort of tension. The fact that, okay, you can keep organizations to this sort of post-growth stage when you need to respond to a crisis or when you have some biophysical constraints, but still when you want to grow things at a post-firm level, so when you want to expand things to a supply chain level, well, things might become problematic because you are facing things in a market which operates according to a different logic. And what also we see through these examples is that we could see a very nice example of some sort of firms, like the last example that I presented, which operate to a different paradigm. In typical firms, such as capital managed firms, what we call the normal SMEs, what happens is that you have a capitalist or a representative, a capitalist, a manager that hires workers, pays them a fixed income, a wage, and takes the surplus. What we could see in more democratic organizations, like the last one I presented, that could provide a better way to have a transition towards a circular economy is a labor-managed firm in which we have this relationship between capital and labor completely reverted. We have workers that hire capital, remunerated at a fixed rate, they pay back the loan to the bank, and take the surplus as essentially their wage, which is variable and depends on the performance of the firm. And Mario, over to you for the final bit.
Yes. So what actually we are proposing is a circular economy promoted by productive units, or if you want to call it firms or company or organization, that are radically different from the kind of vertical organized organization that dominates market economy nowadays is in the vast majority of the world. So such a democratic firm will be based on a model in which decisions are taken by workers instead of the people who put the capital, the money, right? And this is the model. This is the dominant model. No, you have corporation in which you have capital, so you have investors, and then production is made through this vertical flow, no, of money or capital from above. So the idea is to reverse the relationship between who owns the capital, so the money and the financial resources, to trigger production, and who actually make production possible. So the worker, if you want to use a vintage kind of language. So in this idea, you have like capitalists take the place of the workers as fixed income earners, and you have variable incomes traditionally associated with capitalists that are earned by the members of democratic firms. So you have like a system that is actually upside down. And then this is probably the most exciting slide of our presentation. This is a sort of shopping list, and then we want also to announce that me and Andrea, we will found our own political party based on this program. Of course, I'm joking. So we want to finish this intervention by outlining a potential political action, very concrete action that we can propose tomorrow to our politicians. First one is that in order to make this transition to a more democratic form of organization, we need to create incentive for democratic post-growth company to thrive and to emerge. No? Through, for example, public procurement and fiscal policy, we can create like a fiscal incentive that encourage alternative organization to emerge, or to encourage workers that are fed up to be obliged to produce something that they don't believe in, or they disagree, or that they have an ethical problem or moral problems with. Second point, create incentive for reconverting unutilized, unused capacity through industrial symbiosis. Third, eliminate subsidies to polluting sector. You just imagine that the oil industry is one of the most subsidized industry in the West. We promote something like link subsidies to implementation of circular economic practice, for example, and this is probably one of the most controversial proposal, is to establish caps. No, caps on profits, resources use, energy, emission, like absolute cap. No? And what we propose is not to give to the markets the possibility to allocate these caps, but to establish cap, like, and we are not talking about some sort of radical communism order. If you think that the UK, that is not the Soviet Union, just only in the 70s, at the end of the 70s, they had like corporate taxes that in some cases were around 90%. So we are not talking about like a radical, totally radical, different kind of political order. And then discuss at least initiative like the minimum universal basic income, or somebody are talking about the care income, or to establish a cap for individual maximum income. We don't have time to discuss in details all this political proposal, but I think that this is just a good this is a good idea just to open up a debate, maybe in another session. And finally, in the context of the European Union, I think that there is the need to revise the EU treaties. That's for example, Andrea was criticizing the fact that there are very strict caps in terms of producing debts in relation with GDP. I think we can conclude here with this Walter Benjamin quotes. And the final the marking point, the final statement that I would like you to absorb from this discussion is that remember that we can create startups, that we can create new technology, but whatever we do is going to be political. So it will have a political implication. So we have to understand the context.
Thank you very much, both of you, for this very inspiring presentation. There was, as both of you saw when taking turns, to reply on the chat, there was quite a large debate, and I believe that most of the questions have been answered on the chat, either by you, Mario, or by Andrea. Just wondering if anyone else has any other question that you feel that it was not clarified for this. Any of the people that posted the questions. Just say it orally now again. But as I said, most of the questions have been definitely answered.
It's a big deal. You allow me to say something. I think we should have a workshop and have also, academics and practitioners and ask these questions and see how this will come out in the different rooms, and then we can put them together. So it's a big debate. Also, I would like to say that 42% of funds for startups, they come from government, and this cannot be sustainable. So we have to think who is leading and who is paying the bill at the end of the day, and who takes the risk. Okay, who takes the risk? For me as an academic here, getting my paycheck, that's fine. But entrepreneur, the main ingredient is taking risk, putting their money and time. So we have to think for all these things. And my view for this is we need resilient, very human-centered, with social values, of course, okay, with SDG standards, in order to make all this happen. This is a great, actually, proposal that you make. But I like also round tables to bring people together so we can see when we can find the first step that we should do in order to make it happen. Otherwise, it will be just a theoretical, contribution.
Okay, can I answer Mira question? She's saying, I see different governance structure and modes of production that can be observed today. Yes, exactly. What we are, and this was also the main point of my seminar last week. We already observing alternative forms of post-growth organization that are experimenting with alternative forms. Some of them can be defined convivial. The point is that these alternatives organization are feasible, are feasible. So we are not like proposing something that is completely idealistic or something completely different from what economy works now. We are proposing a different alternative in order to foster, incentivize these alternatives, because we want this alternative to become the mainstream. And just very quick comments about Panos' unsustainability of government expenditure in startup. Let me disagree on this point. Most of the major innovation projects in the US, we are not talking about Soviet Union. Most of the most important technology, from touchscreen to internet to Wi-Fi, they were state-funded projects. So it's not about like who is
because I know that topic very well, and I was there, and actually I did my startup there, and I make.
Yeah, it's not about who is putting the capital for me. It's about the direction. What is the direction? What is the kind of society we want to live in the next 20 years? And what kind of technology will allow us, will enable?
We can do both. I mean, that's the question. To go one direction or the other is the easy thing. Can we do both? That's my, because I've been in both worlds. I had my startup in 1986 in the United States. I make a big exit and I came back in Europe and I spent my money. Okay, so this is the story. So I know what's happening in US. Actually, I'm also an investor, business angel investor. I'm losing money of helping, but by giving my own money, I create jobs. This is my own, and out of 10 investments, we're losing 8 or 9, and on the 10th, we try to break even. So there is a big debate of this that we have to discuss, totally agree. the basic principle should be human values. We should not jeopardize that. Don't take me wrong, okay? If I could find a social enterprise that I can invest and also get money and give them back to the society, that's the best model. But I could not find that model yet. I'm expecting for the new ESRs to find it. Okay, and I will be the first one to invest without any return back. Okay, so this is the debates, but we have to get out, because what we're blaming in all of us, if you give money to researchers, they will do more research. So we have also to see the other side, and we have to be open, and of course everybody has its own opinion. We're not here to teach, but we're here to learn, all of us, all the time. But this is the debate. So from the slides I saw very good things, opportunities for a creative solution. That's what I got out as a key takeaway. So that's the view I would like also, my advice for the ECRs to see it. There were great opportunities there for a creative solution and keeping, you know, the red lines where it should be. Sorry for interrupting.
Thank you, Panos. And yeah, I agree with you. You know, it would be great to have further roundtables where we can discuss about these ideas, also with people who come from a different background, from a different perspective. Absolutely, that's what we need to do.
Okay, excellent. I believe that everything got settled now, more or less. Everything was answered. So thank you very much, both of you. I believe we can close this specific presentation now and take maybe 4 or 5 minute break before the next one and the last one actually for today. So let's take a 5-minute break and then we resume. Okay, if everyone is back from the mini break, I believe we can resume the presentation and proceed to the last presentation from today, which looks at pitching strategies, a very important part of the money asking process, let's say, for startups. And I would like to invite now Roberto and Eugenio in order to deliver this presentation. Thank you very much again for your great availability and contribution to this event.
Thanks a lot, Adrian. Okay, so this is the last presentation of this morning, and the main aim in this case is to define what is an elevator pitch, and in particular how to pitch a business idea to stakeholders, or more in general to investors for your startup and for your company. So the presentation will define the main strategies for an effective pitch of your business idea that can be used to attract potential investors, for instance. We can define an elevator pitch as a short description of an idea, of a product, of a service, but also in many cases of a consolidated company that can pitch the mission, that can pitch its vision, and so on. The elevator pitch should be shorter than an elevator ride. So this is the meaning of this word, of this term, and meaning that about of couple of minutes you have to attract the potential investor. A couple of minutes if you live in a skyscraper and you have an elevator journey that is it's so long. In my case, it should be shorter than this ride, because our building has not this time. So in the concept, you should consider that also applies to pitching yourself, to pitching your research, and to pitching your other task and your other activity as an individual. But in this case, you should focus on the company and of the startup version of the pitch, and also the pitching strategies related to this domain, to this content. So your elevator pitch should be enough to explain your startup idea and leave only the investor curious for reading more about your project, about your startup, about your company, making him curious to read the entire business plan that you could write about your entrepreneurial project. And making him curious, in my opinion, could be the best aim of your pitch, of your presentation pitch. So I really love the concept of an elevator pitch in which you can summarize your business idea. And I suggest you to consider also as a fantastic mental exercise for you as a team. In this case, during the opportunity offered by this school. And you should also consider that this activity is very commonly overlooked by startuppers, but also by consolidated companies. In fact, there are many startups with high business potential, with an excellent team, with complementary expertise in many cases, with good products, with good service, with patents in many cases, but that have not good dissemination skills to attract potential investors. So, Eugenio, now the stage is yours, and I ask you please to give us some indications to design an effective pitch for our startups and for our companies.
Oh, sure. Thank you for your presentation, Roberto. Then, as first, you can see my presentation.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, then this is the agenda of this is the agenda of our lesson. At the beginning, we will talk about how communication happens and how this can change during the project lifetime. After, I'm going to focus on the elevator pitch presentation, and the business plan 1 situation, and evaluate the requirement in each one of these speech moments. Structuring a business plan optimally is not the only step necessary for the success of your idea. It is also necessary to know how to present your idea to external stakeholders in order to obtain funds. During this lesson, I will present some rules to build a good presentation of oneself and project idea. These indications are valid across the board, not only in the entrepreneurial field, but also in other situations, correctly contextualized, obviously. Sorry. Each communication form provides a flow of information from one or more entities to others. Let's start to consider the communication between two people, assuming in a simple way that there is only a single person who speaks and one other who listens. The speaker is focused on transmitting all the information he or she wants to communicate. However, the listener is not just focused on listening. His or her attention can be divided in other topics or activities. The amount of information present within the person who is speaking eventually will never be completely transmitted to the other person for various reasons, such as the speaker does not want to communicate certain information or fails or get distracted, or there are languages barriers between the speaker and the listener, or the listener is distracted or bored. However, it has been highlighted that even though the percentage in the funnel are mean value and with a very high variance, of all the speaker can communicate on average, the listener, it remains between 20% and 5%. Let us now consider the case of an innovative project presentation. As a matter of fact, an investor considers only a small percentage of the proposals received, around the 3%. Presenting an innovative product, aiming at an important market, or having a reliable and qualified work team are the factors that can attract attention to a project. The chances to receive an investment so increase when the project proposals present both clear and defensible competitive advantages and robust development plans. Because the efficacy of our speech is target around 12–30%, and only the 3% of all the project is able to obtain funds. For this reason, it's necessary to present for your project in the best and effective way possible from the very beginning. Here there is a spiral representation of the several steps that a project can go through. When an idea is born, nothing is fixed, but there is only the awareness about its cleverness. After problem and resource are identified and required actions are taken in consideration for the project success, there is the phase of the investment, retention, and expansion, and advocacy action will be done to reinforce and protect our project. Different requirements are needed in each phase of a project, as well as different presentation approaches are required in several project steps. The first one is the elevator pitch, where there is no necessity or deep technical information, but the main fuel in this phase is the passion for the idea and the communication skills. The second step is the business plan, where a deeper technical point of view is necessary and communication tools are more standardized. The third step is the dynamic plan and requires different skill according to specific field of application. Creating interest is essential in the first moment of your speech in order to gain listener attention. The chance that your project will be immediately discarded is real. In fact, unconsciously, in the first 7-15 seconds, investors already understand if your presentation may have interesting contents in it or not. It has been proved that arousing the interest of the other party grants another 5-15 minutes of attention in which it will be possible to highlight how innovative the idea and how interesting the market and how qualified the working team is. Here an example where we can see how in different situations a person could present himself. In the first case, the video show what not to do, rambling information with absolutely nonsense, while in the second example, it is shown what a successful elevator pitch is. A list of information as summed up that it could be easily expressed in a tweet. Let's watch it.
There is a problem with the sound.
Well, so after that, what is an elevator pitch? As we have just seen in the previous video, it gets its name from the 2-minute opportunity to tell a story during an elevator ride. The elevator pitch is a widely used communication tool, but is also a useful exercise in order to effectively articulate your value proposition. It is divided in introduction, description of opportunity, and potential benefit of the new venture. The goal of the elevator pitch is to catch investors' attention to proceed to the next step. For example, in order to start the conversation or to put a foot in the door, but not to conclude a financial agreement for your idea. And as you can guess, the pitch requires an effective articulation, reflection, and reframing. In fact, the rules to have an optimal pitch are 5. The first is to impress the listener, astonishing him from the first moment. For this reason, avoid starting with the usual sentence, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I work in the field of," but start with a catchy sentence or an intriguing question. A compelling opening line will immediately attract the other person's interest and make him prompt to continue to listen to you. Another fundamental factor is to use a simple, understandable language, avoiding too abstract or complicated technical words. For example, if you deal with the green home staging, you could be saying that you are involved in renovating and furnishing houses with a green perspective in order to make them more interesting on the market and sell them faster. Avoid talking about data and skills. Time is short and you need to be concise. Listener will ask you for more details about the idea and the team leader if they are interested, obviously. Be passionate about your idea and demonstrate a genuine attachment to the topic. So a pitch is absolutely not an improvised speech, and it must be built carefully. Otherwise, the investor will be down before to be up to the floor. In relation to the content, it is also important to understand which dimension of your idea is dominant. This is another important step in order to emphasize that dimension. Is it more effective? Then, in your pitch, you should highlight how your idea is performing better than the average ones. Is it more convenient? Then in your pitch, you should highlight how your idea is framing better than others for a specific need or experience. For instance, location or speed of service or customization, etc. Is it more affordable? Then in your pitch, you should highlight how your idea is cheaper than the average ones. Once you have passed the first step, as we already said, arousing interest in the investors, it is important to understand how to communicate your idea during technical interviews when business plan is presented. Now, let's see how to best approach presenting a business plan. There are 3 things to watch out for: requirement, audience, and resources. Each presentation for each situation is going to be a bit different. Some investor will be happy with 3 minutes, while others will demand you stand there for 7, 15 minutes. So be informed about all the guidelines you need to know to write your presentation. In particular, focus on how long the speech must be, how many points you are required to cover, and if you must include sources or visuals. If you know the investors, you probably have an idea about their knowledge on topic. But for virtual circumstances, you may be in dark. Either way, cut the representation to make zero assumptions. If you're presenting to people you know, it will be easy to know what to break down and what to gloss over. But if you are presenting to unknown, you need to know about them and their knowledge levels too. So you may have to break your presentation down into its most basic concept. Find out what you can about their backgrounds. And at last, but not least, you need to consider resources. If you're giving a presentation in a facility you have never visited before, it's best to inquire about what you will have at your disposal and what you will need to set up beforehand. Does the facility have a computer and projector screen? Is there a working Wi-Fi connection? Is there a microphone, a podium? Is there someone who can assist organizing the equipment before your presentation? All these are important resources to know about, both for material preparation of your presentation and for your psychological mood. Create a script for your presentation. Although you could write everything out, it's best to use notes to jog your memory. You'll sound more like you're talking and be able to make more eye contact. Only have 1 point per note card. That way you won't end up searching the note card for your information. And don't forget to number the note card in case you mix it up. And the points on your cards shouldn't match your presentation. Instead of regurgitating information, discuss why the key points of your presentation are important, or highlight the different points of view on this topic within the field. Choose a limited number of ideas you want your audience to comprehend and remember. To do this, find the most important points in your presentation and make sure to drill them home. The rest of your presentation should be extras. If they have already read the different project documents, they don't need to be lectured on it. They are there to learn more. So make an outline of the highlights, to help you prepare your presentation. As you from the outline, you'll see what aspect of your work pop out the most, and in what order they would be best relayed in. As you go through this outline, please remove any jargon if it may not be understood. Design visual aids to make your presentation even better. To help your audience follow along, and for the visual learners, use a slide with graphics, charts, and bullet points to make everything a bit more captivating. It can enhance the information in your presentation, yes, sorry. But it also keeps everyone from wiggling around in their seats. If you have any statistics at all, turn them into graphs. The contrast will seem starker when put in picture before your audience. General numbers are sometimes meaningless. Instead of thinking about 25% and 75%, they'll be thinking about the 15% difference they see before them. If you won't have access to the proper technology, print visual aids and poster board or form core board. Presentation software as PowerPoint can also double as note cards. Instead of missing with small piece of paper, you can just click a button to get your next prompt. If using presentation software, don't use a lot of words or sentences. Think in short phrases and pictures. Think in terms of conversation. You have a personality and you are a human engaging with an audience. Use their humanness to create empathy. It's okay to be a bit repetitive, so emphasizing is important ideas will enhance comprehension and recall. When you have gone for circle back to previous point to lead your audience to the right conclusion. Minimize the unnecessary details when highlighting the main ideas you want to relay. You don't want to overload your audience with the fluff, forcing them to miss the important stuff. So show enthusiasm, and very boring topic can be made interesting if there is passion behind it. Sometimes you might have programmed pitches or short business plan presentation. For this reason, it will be better for you to have also an available brief presentation of your activities with this content. Who you are and what you present, a brief description that summarizes the function, the utility of innovation. For example, the mission, the vision of our nascent company should be kept in one or most two sentences. Explain with simple sentences, a few bullet points, the need, the problem, the benefits related to the innovative offer. Where possible, argue its relevance with research data or qualitative evidence on the market and its growth potential. Briefly explain the business idea, that resulting product, and how this responds to the target described in the previous information. Also use data, images, and anything that can serve to motivate why this is an idea destined to be successful. Provide qualitative and quantitative elements and data in order to clarify the potential market, the competition in the field, and the forces involved and their relative intensity. With the help of images and diagrams, explain in a few words how service or product work and create value for the customer. Emphasize the point of difference from the competition and put yourself in the customer's shoes. Explain in a few words or even with a few bullet points the revenue sources and how to generate them. Also use images, graphs, and figures. Explain in a few lines also with bullet points the development lines and how the competitive advantage will be regenerated over the time. Also explain how and why the business could have one international development. Brief description of the people working on the project and their ability to make it grow. A description of the result achieved, for example, product development, patent, customer, and active partnership is necessary. Describe also how much money are you looking for and for what. Obviously, you can combine all this information according to the situation, but it will be necessary to not have more of 9 or 10 slides. How to improve your speech? The only solution is practice it. Practice your presentation in front of friends and colleagues. Is very useful. Ask for constructive criticism. This helps you know whether or not you're meeting the time requirement, and if not, how you could tweak your style also. And once you've recited it 20 times before breakfast, your nervous should be at the minimum. If you can grab a friend who you think has a similar knowledge level of your audience, all the better. He helps you to see what points are foggier to remember with less expertise on the topic. Tape record yourself. All right, so this is a little much, but if you are really nervous, you may find listening to yourself beneficial. You can see which part you are nervous about and which parts you have nailed down. It will help you to control the flow when you listen back. It also helps you with the volume. Some people get rather timid when in the spotlight, so you may not be aware that you are not loud enough. Be warm, you are allowed to be a person, not just a machine that relates facts. Welcome in your audience and take a few seconds to establish a comfortable atmosphere. Do the same with your conclusion. After some practice, the best strategy for an optimal pitch will be based on just do it. But what does all this theoretical explanation mean? Let's see some pitching example. The elevator pitch is not a speech only for expertise people, but for everyone who would like to work on it. Here we have the 2015 elevator pitch winner at University of Dayton during the business plan competition. Let's listen. Now, I have other videos, but I'm at the time, so thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much for this very, very useful and applied presentation. It's exactly what we needed and what it was required for especially for the ESRs in terms of them preparing their pitch for Friday, let's say.
Thanks.
Like it was really, really spot on. Thanks for also sharing the links for the videos. I believe they can go and watch them later on. Make sure, guys, to take the links, to copy the links now, just not when you exit to lose them. And if there are any further questions, I believe that we are able, of course, to contact you. I mean, if you're open to take any further questions, let's say by email, and everything should go quite well. Okay, super.
No
so
problem.
thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of you. This was very, very useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks to you.
Okay. Okay, so this was basically, let's say, the end of day 2, at least for the public part. A day with more, let's say, applied content, in the sense that we managed to complete the entrepreneurship crash course with elements related to market launch, neuromarketing and innovative promotion approaches, pitching strategies, and of course a more inclusive and comprehensive discussion on innovation in a post-growth world. And all this should actually complement quite well all the things that we have seen in the previous day. And anyone now who is interested in developing, let's say, an entrepreneurial concept, a startup concept, from the beginning until actually having the pitch at the end, should have the basis, let's say, in order to do so. I will explain a bit more the next steps for the ESRs later in the afternoon when we have the synchronized sessions. But for now, I just want to give a very brief overview on what will happen, what will actually happen tomorrow, which is day 3, and day which is actually focused on responsible research and innovation and circular economy business model cases, where we will start with an overview on what is responsible research and innovation, why is it important, and then we move to responsibility in circular economy, ending up with bottom-up case studies of circular economy startups, in order to see how all these concepts link together and how you guys, ESRs, and anyone who is interested can really take advantage of all these beneficial and innovative approaches that will give you the required impact, the social impact and the community impact, and all the other types of non-economic, let's say, impacts that they are very, very important to be taken into account. So thank you very much again for being with us today. I'm not sure if Andrea, do you want to add something, or we're good?
No, everything looks good, Adrian. So thank you very much for arranging and organizing and supervising also day 2. Again, useful information for our ESRs, useful knowledge, useful reflection, excellent debate, both with questions and be in the chat. I'm sure that this will contribute to the work they are doing for their business proposals. And as you said, the public facing part of the day is over now. We will now again starting working in our small groups. I think now, if I'm not mistaken, there is a 1-hour break, and then we will restart everything with the private sessions at 1:30 UK time, 2:30 CET time. Thank you very much for the people who are attending this event from outside the ReTraCE consortium. Check the agenda. There are more interesting talks going on tomorrow, and we hope to see you again also tomorrow for the remaining talks and seminars. So thank you very much, both to the organizers, the presenters, and the attendees.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.